Now, for more on the fallout for Turkey, I spoke with Saruhan Hatipoglu, CCTV's global economics analyst. I began by asking him how this latest attack would hurt Turkey's already fragile tourism industry.
I think it's going to be a very big impact in the negative way, because if we even look at 2015, Rachelle, the number of tourists coming to Turkey declined very little, actually, compared to 2014. It was about 2% or so, but the revenue itself made a huge difference. $9 to $10 billion revenue loss just last year because of these incidents. And now 2016 actually started with a ISIL attack again in Istanbul, the center of tourists. And it kept on going, big cities now, and yesterday's airport attack was a direct signal to foreign tourists that this is going to continue in this country. And Turkey's tourism revenue is about close to 5% of GDP, which doesn't look too big, but in terms of their current account deficit, the country's current account deficit, that's a big, big source of revenue to finance that deficit. And the way we're looking at the data right now, actually, for May, it just was revised, and overall number of tourists even now is about 30% lower than last year around this time. From Russia, 90% lower, from Germany, 35% lower. So that's going to have a big impact.
And then with that huge drop in numbers, you also have the impact on the related businesses that come from all these tourists coming. So how do you think local businesses are going to fare in all this?
That is a very good question, because as much as tourism is an important part of the economy, as we talked about vis-a-vis the current account deficit, consumption, private consumption is what drives Turkish economy. Two-thirds of actually economic growth, GDP, comes from private consumption, and that's going to take a hit. First quarter numbers were also great. The economy expanded more than people expected. Private consumption was up 7%, which was not expected, but that is going to have a huge hit now on the GDP numbers and small businesses as well, because small businesses in Istanbul and many parts of the area depends on tourists. But if you take the tourists out, let's talk about domestic consumption in general, now that's going to be impacted as well.
And we also see that Russia says it's going to review its sanctions against Turkey when it comes to things like its charter flights. Do you think perhaps a reversal of that decision will really help the Turkish economy, being that they have all these other distresses going on?
Certainly. The Russia crisis had a huge economic blow. I just mentioned the number of tourists from Russia, which is a big chunk of the overall tourists coming to Turkey. It was down 90% in May compared to a year ago. But other than that, there were sanctions against agricultural imports going to Russia from Turkey. So yes, that is going to have a positive impact, especially Turkish Stream project now, which was abandoned by Turkey in December 2015, when the crisis started, might be coming back because Gazprom, Turkey's Gazprom's second largest client, customer, I should say, after Germany. So they're pushing it from that way in terms of natural gas sales to Turkey. I think that apology is going to have a good impact on the economy as far as Turkey is concerned.
And another potential bright spot amid all this tragedy is Israel and Turkey reaching a deal to normalize diplomatic relations. How do you think that could affect Turkey's economy?
That is also going to have a positive impact. The whole 6-year bitterness between the two, I mean, these two countries are, for lack of a better word, are frenemies. And in the Middle East, you're either a friend or an enemy. Having a frenemy in that region is very difficult. But these two countries are. But past 6 years, it was just bitterness due to political reasons. But there's a huge gas field now in Israel, Leviathan field, which is, I think the capacity is about 22 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That just by itself is enough to satisfy Turkish natural gas consumption for 15 years. So there is a reason that this relationship has begun to again get warmer, because Turkey wants to get this natural gas, Israel wants to sell it, and they're going to find a way to make it work.
And people are certainly going to be looking for some more bright spots if tourism is taking such a hit. Now, in terms of the personal connection that you have to this story, I understand that you have family in Istanbul, and when these tragedies happen, people still have to somehow live and work and get back to normal. What's been some of the personal experiences that some of you or perhaps your family have endured during this time?
Well, this one was pretty close to home, actually, to family. My cousin was going to the airport. She would actually be at the airport were not for Istanbul traffic to pick up her husband and daughter. And when I learned of the incident from Twitter, I looked at my watch and I said, she's there. So that scare is something very difficult to express to communicate, but I was one of the lucky ones because I got to talk to her and learned what happened. But there are a lot of people who didn't. It's not only in Turkey. It's not only in Istanbul, Ankara. It's in Brussels. It's in Paris. It's all around the world. It's difficult for people that get used to living with this. I have some friends from Israel who tell me this is what we do, and you just keep going. You don't give in to terrorism. You don't give up. You just live your daily life. And I think in Turkey, people are starting to get used to that.
And it's sad. You don't want this to become business as usual, but as you say, people do have to get back to the normalcy of their lives.
Absolutely.